a snow shovel, a broom handle. According to the Department of Homeland Security, these are the weapons that justify deploying the United States military onto American streets. On Thursday, President Donald Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807, a law last used to quell the LA riots in 1992, to suppress what his administration calls an uprising in Minneapolis. But if you look at the actual incident report filed by the DHS yesterday, the insurrection they are citing didn't involve armed militias. It didn't involve a coordinated terror plot. It involved a traffic stop, a Venezuelan national named Julio Cesar Sosa Celis, and two other men allegedly wielding household cleaning tools. Yet within 12 hours of this incident, the narrative shifted from a local arrest to a justification for martial law. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche is now on record calling the situation in Minnesota a Minnesota insurrection. Why is a traffic stop in North Minneapolis being used as the pretext for the most significant expansion of executive military power in 3 decades? Because this isn't about a broomstick, and it certainly isn't about a single traffic stop. This is about Operation Metro Surge, a federal deployment that has placed 3,000 armed agents in a single American city, a force 5 times the size of the local police department, and the inevitable collision that follows when you turn a neighborhood into a theater of operations. Let's look at how this story is being framed by the corporate press today. If you turn on the cable networks, you are seeing a very specific loop of footage. You see fireworks exploding, you see tear gas clouds, you see headlines like "Chaos in Minneapolis" and "Agents under attack." The framing is classic selective outrage. The media is focusing entirely on the reaction, the protests, the shouting, the disorder in the streets, but while minimizing the catalyst. They are framing this as a sudden breakdown of law and order that requires a federal savior. What they are ignoring or burying in the 10th paragraph is the timeline that brought us here. This did not start yesterday with a shovel. This started exactly 1 week ago, on January 7th, with the death of Renee Nicole Good. Renee Good was a 37-year-old U.S. citizen. She was a mother. She was a member of the PTA. And when she was shot in the head by an ICE agent named Jonathan Ross, she wasn't attacking anyone. She was sitting in her car. The mainstream narrative is treating these as 2 separate stories. Story A, the tragic mistake last week. Story B, the violent uprising this week. This is a manipulation technique known as decoupling. By separating the cause from the effect, they allow the administration to frame the protesters as professional agitators and terrorists, rather than a community responding to the perceived extrajudicial killing of a neighbor. Furthermore, notice the language being used by federal officials and amplified by the press. The word insurrection is not being used accidentally. It is a legal term of art. It is the specific keyword required to trigger the 1807 Act. The media is repeating this word without challenging its applicability. They are asking, will he use the act? Instead of asking, does a confrontation involving a broomstick meet the legal definition of an insurrection? Let's look at the facts, not the spin. The hard evidence we have available as of this recording on Friday, January 16th, 2026. Fact 1, the catalyst. On January 7th, ICE agent Jonathan Ross shot Renee Nicole Good. The official DHS statement claimed Good tried to run the agent over. They claimed self-defense. However, video evidence, eyewitness testimony, and the analysis of her family's attorneys contradict this. The footage shows Good attempting to pull away from the officer, not toward him. Despite this, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem labeled Good, a suburban mother, a domestic terrorist. Fact 2, the escalation. In response to the outcry over Good's death, the federal government did not de-escalate. They initiated Operation Metro Surge. According to Governor Tim Walz, this operation has deployed between 2,000 and 3,000 federal agents into the Twin Cities. To put that in perspective, the Minneapolis Police Department has roughly 600 officers. The federal government has essentially occupied the city with a force 500% larger than the local authorities. Fact 3, the incident on January 14th. This brings us to Wednesday night. Here is the official account from the Department of Homeland Security, released yesterday. At 6:50 p.m. CT, Federal law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted traffic stop in Minneapolis of an illegal alien from Venezuela. The statement continues. While the subject and law enforcement were in a struggle on the ground, two subjects came out of a nearby apartment and also attacked the law enforcement officer with a snow shovel and broom handle. The officer then fired a defensive shot, striking the Venezuelan man, Julio Cesar Sosa Celis, in the leg. We know Sosa Celis arrived in the U.S. in 2022. The Trump administration claims he is illegal. Other reports suggest he entered under a humanitarian parole program that the current administration has revoked. We know the injuries are non-life threatening. We know the alleged weapons were household tools. Fact 4. The threat. Yesterday, January 15th, President Trump posted the following statement to Truth Social. If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in that once great state. This is not a vague comment. This is a threat to federalize the National Guard or deploy active duty troops, bypassing the governor's authority. Here is what we don't know yet. We do not have body camera footage of the Sosa Celis shooting. We do not have the medical reports on the officer's injuries to verify the severity of the shovel attack. We do not have confirmation of when or if the Insurrection Act paperwork has been drafted. The reaction to this threat has exposed a fractured chain of command in the United States. On one side, you have the state of Minnesota. Governor Tim Walz has gone on record calling the federal presence a campaign of organized brutality. Mayor Jacob Frey has explicitly told ICE to get out of his city, stating, "We cannot counter Donald Trump's chaos with more chaos." St. Paul Public Schools have announced they are moving to online learning next week. Not because of a virus, but because parents are afraid to send their children outside with 3,000 federal agents roaming the streets. On the other side, you have the federal apparatus. Kristi Noem, the DHS secretary, stated yesterday she has no plans to pull out. She confirmed she has discussed the Insurrection Act with the president. Deputy AG Todd Blanche is blaming the local officials for the violence, accusing Walz and Frey of encouraging violence against law enforcement. Do you see the contradiction here? The federal government enters a city. They shoot a U.S. citizen, Good. A week later, they shoot a foreign national, Sosa Celis, during a traffic stop. When the locals protest, the federal government labels the reaction to their operations as an insurrection. It is a self-fulfilling loop. Deploy agents, create friction, use friction to justify deploying soldiers. We are also seeing a massive shift in the definition of terrorist. Last week, a mother in an SUV was a terrorist. This week, men with a broom and a shovel are insurrectionists. The bar for deploying the U.S. military is being lowered in real time. Based on the speed of this escalation and the specific language used by Deputy AG Blanche, I am making the following prediction. Expect the media narrative and the federal response to shift within 72 hours from restoring order to federalizing control. Specifically, I predict President Trump will move to federalize the Minnesota National Guard early next week. He does not need to send in the 82nd Airborne initially. The Insurrection Act allows him to take command of the state's own guard units, stripping Governor Walz of his authority over them. Why? Because Walz is the primary obstacle. The rhetoric blaming corrupt politicians is setting the stage to remove the governor from the chain of command. Once the guard is federalized, the narrative will shift to arresting organizers and agitators, likely including the legal observers who witnessed these shootings. They need to stop the flow of information that contradicts the official reports. This is the most dangerous moment in this story. Not the shooting itself, but the silence that follows when the military takes over the narrative. They don't want this information getting out. They want you to focus on the fireworks and the tear gas, not the timeline and the contradictions. If you want to help us fight the algorithm and spread the truth, you know what to do. Share this video, download it, keep the record straight.